Welcome, everyone, to our Best Director Through Her Lens salon with Lesli Linka Glatter. We're so excited to have Lesli here today. Welcome to everyone. I know you all know all about Best Director, or you wouldn't be here today, but this chat is going to be recorded, and we hope a lot of people will be able to watch it and get some benefit from it. So just to generally introduce, Best Director is a group of DGA directors, ADs, DGA members of all kinds, volunteer organization that came together 3 years ago after another year came and went with 0 women nominated in the major categories. I was not around that first season, but Paige was and Etta was, and kind of went, well, this can't continue. And kind of noticed also that women weren't getting the same publicity budget, which was how people get noticed to be nominated for awards. And so Best Director was formed to kind of close that gap, find the women who were deserving of recognition and promote them and get them nominated for the DGA Awards. Began with promoting women for the feature award and the first feature award. This year we expanded to TV categories in drama, comedy, and limited series. We hope going forward we'll be able to expand to more categories within the DGA and then possibly to even more categories and a broader mission in general to promote women directors across the industry. So welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here. I should introduce myself. My name is Jen Derwingson-Peacock. I'm a writer and director, and I will pass it on to my co-chair. I think we've got all the housekeeping out of the way. But again, if you have any issues, please put it in the chat. If you need any recognition, put it in the chat and we'll find you and call on you. Now I'll pass it along to my co-chair, Etta Benjacool, who will take it from here. Etta.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I'm actually just going to thank our sponsor, Evercast. And for, some of you may have worked with Evercast, so you know what it's about. Evercast is a platform. It's a real-time collaboration platform that combines video conferencing, HD live streaming, and audio. You can stream creative workflow from a live camera on set to Avid or Premiere or any other kind of creative software. And it's basically the industry standard for film, TV, commercials, and video games for pre to post production. Thank you to Evercast, and I will pass it along to Paige Morrow Kimball, who started this 3 years ago. And Paige, I think Rama was one of your cohorts. I was not around 3 years ago.
A lot of the people on this call were part of that. Rama actually designed our logo, helped come up with the name. I mean, we all kind of put our heads together. And at first it was Hanali and Kimberly McCullough who jumped in to spearhead it. And then the next year, you, Etta, and I ran it, and now Jen's with us. And a whole committee that makes everything happen. So I love this group, and I'm just so happy that we found a way to make some noise and create change. So it's been a real pleasure being a co-chair. So I wanted to welcome you all to our third Best Director Through Her Lens event called How to Find Creativity and Opportunity in Adversity with the marvelous, legendary Lesli Linka Glatter, who I'm really proud to have her email address. I think that's kind of cool. Instead of a webinar, Lesli wanted this to be an intimate roundtable conversation with a group of our peers, women directors, where we can share our stories about turning adversity into opportunity and what we can learn from each other. So you'll all have an opportunity to speak. I hope you came with stories. So I just want to say, Lesli, congratulations on your nomination once again.
Thank you.
I think this is the 8th nomination you've garnered for the DGA. So we just congratulate you. And Lesli is nominated, as many of you know, for the DGA Best Director Award in the TV drama category for Homeland, for Prisoners of War, which is the season finale, which was just an amazing episode on Showtime. And we wanted to mention that she's nominated with her incredibly talented directing team, with her UPM and ADs, Michael Click, Philippa Naughton, who are the UPMs, and her ADs were Sunday Stevens, Wendy Bledsoe, and Yarden Levo. And I just can't help noticing mostly women, which is really awesome.
Thank you.
Let's start this way. What did you think you'd be doing before the pandemic hit?
Yes. Well, I mean, one of the things with love that I love, just jumping into hearing about everyone's stories, that uh, as we know, there's no one right path to directing. Everyone has their own path. And it's so clear listening to all of you who are out there fighting the good fight. And, you know, we all come in. I came from being a modern dancer and a choreographer. We all have the paints in our paint box, and then we get to add more colors to that paint box. And to reinvent. I mean, I feel like this field, we're about constantly reinventing. Like I've been blackballed, like I'm sure other people, and couldn't get a job. And you like have to just hang in there, and all of the stories about moving forward and keep moving forward. And here we are. But yes, I was about to head to Budapest. I literally had my 4 suitcases and 3 boxes packed. And that was March 12th. And I was flying out March 13th. And they called us on March 12th and said, don't go. And literally the boxes and the suitcases stayed in my living room for about 4 weeks as I wandered around the house in my pajamas. And my bunny slippers. And yes, I have bunny slippers. And I realized I can't go on like this. Like I have to figure out what I'm doing in this time.
So, and you came off a 7-year run on Homeland, right?
Yes,
7 years.
it was 7 years.
Executive producer and director.
Yes, and just to throw in, a lot of those years was out of the country. So, I was in Berlin for a year, in South Africa for a year. And what was amazing about Homeland is that we reinvented the show every year. We didn't go back to the same sets that we've established. And so it was very challenging, but it also made it very exciting. It never got easier. Maria, Rama, anyone who's been on the set, it was so challenging because people think we had all this money. We did not. So we were constantly trying to find opportunities in very little. And it was, let's say, it was an 11-day show the last year. Now we started at 8 days. Remember, this is a full hour. This is not a network TV hour. It's not 42 minutes. It's 55 to 60 minutes. That's very short shooting time. So this year, 9 days were out on location, sometimes 3 moves a day, and 2 were inside on sets. So, this last season, 9 months in Morocco. And I don't know if any of you have shot in Morocco. It's the most beautiful culture, but it was the hardest experience of my life. And every day was about relying on your team, trying to figure out the way out of some fucked up situation that you could never dream of. But it also taught me a lot about being resilient. Working in Morocco was you ask for a techno crane on Tuesday, and it's like, yes, techno crane on Tuesday, fantastic. And come Tuesday, you find out, well, the crane's been broken for 3 years. And no one wanted to tell you because they didn't want you to be sad, And then you're like, oh my God. And that happened every day in every department. That was up on the top of a mountain in the Atlas Mountains here. And there was one way in up a road, and one way out. But it was extraordinary. Like, look at that. That's extraordinary. But it was so every logistical decision, plus there are 4 languages being spoken all the time.
Wow.
I only spoke 2 of them, French and English. Arabic and Berber were also spoken all the time.
Are you ever in a situation where your AD team, like literally something completely chaotic happened, completely fell apart, and you had to save it? And did it turn out to be something even better than you'd planned?
Sure, all of you have had that experience on set where, the worst possible thing happens and you have it's what's so great about having such a strong team. We'd all come together and go, how are we going to save this? We can't add another day. What are we going to do? And with all of our brains, we would come up with a solution. And that was constantly every day, all the time. So we cast this young woman. She speaks Dari and Pashto, and we cast her. She's amazing. And off the plane walks a different woman. It's her.
Oh gosh. What did you do?
Actress. So, I mean, this was like what we were dealing with. And like, I laugh about it now, but in the moment, I'm like, what do you mean it was a different person? So, fortunately, she turned out to be great. She was actually wonderful. But I mean, it was really kind of amazing every day. This is my amazing directing team right here, who are just rock stars. And Philippa Naughton, who's British, she's a UPM, our line producer, Michael Click, me, Sunday, who's my partner in crime, Sunday Stevens, who's producer AD, and Wendy Bledsoe, who was our second. And then we had a whole team of Moroccans, but, we had it as well, a whole Moroccan AD team. So what happened when we all went down is I was asked to be on the DGA COVID task force that was led by Steven Soderbergh and Paris Barclay. And that was 6 months. And we met almost every day. And we were tasked working with 4 epidemiologists, the top epidemiologists, to come up with the protocols to go back to work safely. And safely is the operative word. And that was really challenging. And no one had ever heard of zones or social distancing or none of this stuff. No one knew how to deal with it. So it was a steep learning curve. It was very time intensive. But I mean, as all of you know who are out there shooting now, it works. It's not as much fun. You can't see people's faces. There are all sorts of things. But Mary Lou is going like this. You can still do your job and keep people safe. And, I should also, I don't know if I should say this publicly, but I can tell you that the studios and networks did not want to pay for any testing.
Wow.
And the power of having the IA, the IATSE, and SAG together, that they're like, oh, you go out there, but we're not gonna do anything. That's crazy.
Wow. Amazing.
They've all come up. They've all stepped up and
had
have great partners.
Where was this photo taken? What were you shooting here?
So I was about to start a movie for when The Banker's Wife fell apart, which shot in 5 different countries. I wanted to go back and test out what was it like to shoot during a pandemic. I didn't want to wait. So I jumped on a friend's show, the morning show, Mimi Leader's show, who's a wonderful friend. And that's what those photos are from.
I loved that show. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. It went on forever. It was the apocalypse now of episodes. But it was amazing.
You have this great quote here I wanted to share. The COVID pandemic has been such a difficult time for the world and for our industry, but in complicated times, you have to focus on what's essential and try to make it an opportunity to create something positive. Backyard Pictures, which we're going to talk about in a minute, started in Cheryl's backyard and has become our opportunity. And this is why we started talking about doing this, Lesli, is because you were packed to go do The Banker's Wife. You were doing all the episodes, right? Traveling the world. It stopped you in your tracks and you had to shift, but it led to such it led to so much more opportunity.
So interesting because it sounds like hearing what everyone else is doing, that there's a lot of that going on, that it was a time to have to reflect because we were forced to be in our houses. I haven't spent this much time in LA in about 10 years. I mean, I finally found where I keep the Scotch tape. So that was good news. But after being depressed, I really had to figure out what to do. And, I've always been developing, even from afar, from if I was in Morocco and Berlin and setting up projects. But it became very clear to me in this next chapter, I really want to be in charge of my creative destiny. And I want to help other directors be in charge of their creative destiny. So that became the priority for me. So I set up 3 series and 4 films during this time. And then Cheryl, who is an old friend, now ironically, Cheryl Block, I came from being a modern dancer and a choreographer. I spent 10 years overseas. During that time, 6 in Europe, in Paris and London, and 5 in Asia. based out of Tokyo. And Cheryl and I met on my first job in film on Amazing Stories. So I was going in to direct. It was my first professional directing job. She had just moved up from being an editor, and she was the associate producer. So we were kind of the new young girls, at Amazing Stories. And I can tell you, Steven Spielberg was an incredible mentor. That was my film school after having only shot one film before.
So Banker's Wife didn't happen, and then it stopped.
Amazon wants to make it, but it's one of those things that just can't be made until the world is back to, I don't know if there'll ever be a normal again, or it'll be a different normal, but you have to be able to travel unrestricted. So more vaccinations have to happen because Europe's still a mess right now. Yeah. Apparently Budapest is okay, but like Italy is terrible and you can't really travel. You can get there and stay, but you can't go and scout in 3 different countries. So I let that go away emotionally. And then Cheryl and I started meeting in her backyard, 10 feet apart. And we started talking about what kind of stories we wanted to tell. And she has just been partnered. She's been a studio exec, a network exec. She's been a producer. She's run companies. Most recently, she was partnered with Tony Goldwyn and Richard LaGravenese. And we started talking, and she said, well, we've talked about doing this before, but like this would be a serious company. This is not just projects for Lesli to direct. We want to do bold, unique voices, and we want to be a home for creative talent, and there'll be some things I direct, but that's not the purpose of it. The only purpose of it. Let me put it that way.
You had said on the phone to me that you described that yourself, like now, since you had to shift and you and Cheryl partnered, that now you're in this new wave of focusing on creative development, and that you have 2 features and 2 series in development.
I actually have 4 series. We're pitching more.
Wow.
But I have 4. Well, what happened? Cheryl said, we got to find something. We have to define who we are. We can't just go, someone will give us a deal, but that's not what we want. So she said, let's go to our bookshelf and find a book that we both love. So she handed me a book. I handed her a book. I read the book overnight. I was like, oh my God. And it turns out, okay, this book is called Tangerine. George Clooney had optioned it for Scarlett Johansson, and it was set up as a film that Abby Morgan wrote. It's too much story for a film, so it didn't go forward. The option to the book literally had come up like 3 days before I read the book. And we called up CAA and said, what's the deal with this book? And they there were 10 producers going. We were not official yet. We were not a company. 10 producers going out for this book. She put me on the phone with the author of the book. And the author gave us the rights to go out with it. And we had like 5 offers, and we set it up at Apple.
You talked about driven to distraction, like your bandwidth. I mean, pre-pandemic, kind of like where we all were. And now you're kind of in this whole new world because you were forced in a way to make a shift.
Yes.
So again, the adversity creating the opportunity.
Yes.
It's pretty epic.
I think that has been, I think either I was going to fall into total depression, and there have been moments of that. There have been moments of like, is it July? Is it Tuesday? I don't know. It's all the same. But within that, there's also, I think a reminder of how much we have to be grateful for, that we have to find the joy, that we have to keep working. This was so beautiful. You found this page.
Yeah, I was in Ithaca with my daughter. We were looking at colleges. She didn't get a chance to look at anything. So I said, we're going. And I found this on a building right next to where we were staying. And I thought it was really profound. And it's, I think it's sort of touched on so much of what we're talking about Lesli today.
Exactly.
So
this is it. We will never go back to that normal, and probably shouldn't,
maybe not.
but hopefully something better, or.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, and maybe some of you have heard this story because I've told it before. It's my favorite story from when I was a new director about opportunity, finding opportunity. My first series was Twin Peaks, like, series. My Amazing Stories was the anthology. And of course, David Lynch, not the normal producing director, not the normal anything, a unique being on the planet. And uh, as I was getting to know, I directed 4 of them, but as I was getting to know him, I had just watched the first episode, not the pilot. And there was an incredible scene in a bank vault where Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Onkeen were looking in a safety deposit box. And on the table is a moose head. And no one ever refers to the moose head during the scene. It's just sitting there. And they have the whole scene. The camera actually, I don't think ever moves. It's like a 21 millimeter lens. And the scene's incredible. So I went to David and said, David, how did you get the idea to put that moose head on the table? Where did that idea come from? And he kind of looked at me like I was a little crazy. And he said, it was there. I went, what do you mean it was there? He said the set decorator was going to hang the moose head on the wall. And he saw it lying there. And he said, leave the moose head. Something cracked open for me of like, yes, have your plan, do your homework, but be sure you're open to the moose head on the table. Be sure you're open to the opportunities that present themselves.
You had shared that with me, that when stress hits, it can be the opposite of creativity. But when you really understand your story, this is a quote from you, you said you can deal with any kind of adversity and turn it into opportunity. And I'm sure many of the directors on this call have had that exact experience of being prepared, and the stress that we deal with on a daily level, it doesn't rattle you in the same way as if you didn't connect and know that story, know that moose head belonged on that table.
Yes. And being able to, and I think with us, everyone here is mid-career and has been directing for a long time. I love that I think that I'm mid-career, that is even more like at 120, I'm mid-career, guys. But, we've all been directing a long time. And I do feel like once I trust the story, I know where I'm grounded. It's not the same. Yes, I always get nervous, but it's not the same.
Did you ever have a lull during your career? Because many of us, and I know Rachel and I have talked about this, and now she's like, on the other side.
Rachel's like,
but have you, and she can share in a minute, but Lesli, were you ever, because you work all the time, like were you just, inspiring some of us who are trying to get to that next step?
Oh my God.
Did you ever have that lull where you were completely frustrated?
Oh my God. And blackballed, not just frustrated. I had done a pilot. I think it was for, who was it for? I think it was ABC, but I don't even remember. And it was one of those situations where they made us cast someone that was absolutely wrong for the part. But they said, well, we won't pick it up unless you cast that person. But it's that you're making the deal with the devil. It is absolutely the wrong casting. So we shot the pilot with the person and it didn't work. It was the wrong cast. And of course it didn't get picked up. And that, you, as the director, you get blamed. I was absolutely blamed for the pilot. I was blackballed from ABC for I don't know how many years, but it had a ripple effect because, again, there were so few women directors. It's like, because I've been on those calls where I hear, oh, well, I heard she's, it didn't really work. Well, what'd you hear? I'm like the big mouth now because, when you get old, you can be bossy. Like, wait, I know she's a good director. Don't you say that. Tell me exactly what you heard and who said it. Well, we don't know who said it. Well, then you should not be saying that. Do not pass that along, So, and they're like, okay, no. But, I had a really hard time. It was like a year where I had to go back out and do the dog and pony show and like meet everyone.
Well, I think also that's what makes us all in this room appreciate the way you've mentored so many women, as many of the women here has said, and Mary Lou too, who's just been such a champion of many of us. And, even when we're mid-career or a certain age, I mean, it's just a number. Like, we still have to get to the next place. And I just want to, I know we're going to run over. I hope everyone can
But
stay.
I love everyone,
Yeah.
all the women here that are developing their own material.
Love that.
And putting that to me is so incredible, that what's come out of this pandemic, is like trying to be more in control of all of our creative lives. That's a really big plus.
I just wanted to share, Regina Ainsworth had sent this to me, and there's a story here.
So that the picture I took on the left was me literally 1 week before the pandemic and everything shut down, and I was slated to write and direct on 2 different anthology series. The first one was to film the end of March. The second one was to film mid-April, and I experienced many of what a lot of the women here were talking about having to pivot and really consider and reconsider and start focusing on the things that you found passion in within your own selves and your own lives. And I feel like the difference is the ending result here on the right. I'm a big adventurer. I'm a big outdoors girl. I love to hike, run trails, and run. And to avoid the depression, I think I really started throwing myself out into the world of nature, and I started to run out the frustration and the things that the expectation that I had in terms of being able to emerge in a certain way as a director. And what I started to do was take it off me and start putting it off into the universe in the form of what other stories is there that I can tell that are helping to elevate the stories that are not told. And so I was able to then take another dive into a number of pieces I've been developing. One is a YA sci-fi based off of a book trilogy. And we're really now forging ahead with the author. I co-wrote the pilot. We finished the pilot. And now we're getting ready to pitch it. But then with respect to this running with the trails, this is an early developmental stage of a documentary about Native women running and the trauma that they have had to overcome in ways that we've all had to overcome to move forward on our pathway. And I felt like the juxtaposition of those 2 photos were really important because one is really internal, focus on me, and the second really is external, looking at the path ahead and looking at the people around you and who's important on that journey. And so when I got it off myself and I looked at the people in the room and the people that I love the most, which were my young son and my husband, I realized that was what I needed to refocus on and begin telling the stories that I found were missing from the fabric of our society.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's so great, Regina.
Thank you.
So I just want to move it along because a few people want to say something. I'll just jump in with mine because mine are just next slideshow. So I started, Lesli, I think I shared a little bit about you. I just started to keep myself sane. I started walking through my neighborhood and looking for signs of positivity. And I stumbled upon these repurposed trash sculptures. I live in Mar Vista. I don't know if anybody has seen these on Palms Boulevard. And I was like, who is this? What are these? And they're all up and down Palm Boulevard. And I looked up on Nextdoor and everybody's like, who is this artist? There was a whole mystery. And then on my next walk, let's get to the next one. I found her. This is the day I found her. She's here on the left. And she's like, I saw her house and she happened to come outside. So I've spent the last, I think, 7 or 8 months with her, shooting her. There I look really goofy, but so happy I had to use it.
I love this.
One behind me. And she dresses up like a man and she climbs up telephone poles at night in disguise because she's afraid she's breaking the law. But her sole purpose is to spread joy and spread love and in her community. And she didn't start doing this until her 50s. So she's a person who came into her own. And as I started following her, this whole amazing story about her backstory started coming to life. And so I have this documentary that we're in post on, and it's super exciting. I like to say I stepped in a puddle that turned out to be a lake. So that's my shift, adversity into opportunity story.
That's such an amazing story, and it's so beautiful, and she's so cool.
She's so incredibly cool. She welds, like literally like the sparks and the mask thing. And I shot it all on my iPhone, by the way. And I took Rama, you had done a webinar, I think it was with Hana Lee, and you talked about the mics you used and how you navigated, and it was so incredibly helpful. So I wanted to thank you, Rama, because I got a Shure mic, an MV88, and shot the whole thing on my iPhone 11 Pro, and it's been great, beautiful footage. So
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah,
yeah,
I was in the middle of like a $3 million commercial
Oh,
that was 4 places when COVID hit, and we had to stop. But the client wouldn't cancel, so we figured out a way to send a camera package. I like figured out what camera, what mic, what light we could send each of the talent, so they became their own crew and director, and then I directed them virtually over Zoom.
oh my
So
God.
after I did that project, I ended up doing like 3 more of these like big scope things, and I was like, this is so much better to have them direct themselves and shoot themselves. I mean, I was able to direct them to some degree, but then I thought I got to share what I learned with everybody, so I did that talk
it was
about,
so helpful.
just
And
like how great the iPhone is.
I mean, it was so helpful to me. I mean, I really learned from it. I thought I can do this. Nothing. And this is what the squad that the Women's Steering Committee, Maria, and your committee is putting together. And like kind of what you said, Rama, about calling Lesli, when you need something, when you have questions. Etta
I have
Banjacles,
to
I
say,
just shot a branded iPhone. Sorry,
I
Leslie.
love what you're saying, Paige, and also is that we so much can be resources for one another. The fact that you could call Rama, who had this information, having done this, I know I get calls all the time. I call people all the time. And that's what we can do for one another.
Absolutely. I wanted to share Luann. She sent in a slide. So please, everybody, just try to keep your stories brief. I know we're going to go over. I hope everyone can stay. Leslie, are you good on time? If we go
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and I just want to get around. I want to hear, like Mary
Yeah.
Lou, you've been working nonstop. Rachel,
Yeah.
I mean, all of you. I know Etta shot, and I know Jed Derwington Peacock has something to share. Okay, so this is Luann's slide, which is
All
really
right.
cool.
Well, what's interesting about it is that Paige and I have talked about this because a similar thing happened to us. Prior to the pandemic, I had known the man in the middle, the older man with the hat.
Yeah.
I met him as a studio teacher when I was line producing commercials. And he was sort of like a hidden artist back then. And I sort of like followed him his whole life. We just started running into each other. I bought a piece of art from him a while ago. He got in trouble with the government. He had to move to Hawaii. And then he had a stroke. And then I sort of lost touch with him. And then I found him again, or he found me, and he was sort of living in a trailer park, recovering from that stroke. And in doing that, he sort of found this passion for creating this type of art that you're looking at. And so we talked, and I had this sort of random idea about putting what I call them birds, people that I've been fascinated by my entire life. The one in the yellow, she's an interior designer who does amazing things with nothing. And then the young man is a musician, and he's actually my son. So I've always been fascinated by his ability to create. So I thought, I'll just throw them on those birds, and we'll have them travel down to Redondo and see the art and see what happens.
Awesome.
So what came of that is this series idea called The Art of Bird Watching, which really is about a director or a creator identifying their birds, putting them together, and seeing what happens. Because David, the one who had the stroke, found a resilience in his creation, but he's also a pothead, which made it really difficult to find a linear story, which has exploded my mind in trying to cut it together in Premiere. So that's building extreme resilience on my part, but it's really been quite an amazing process. So.
So let's skip to Jen, and if you guys could keep these brief, I'd love to get as many shares as we can. I know it's hard, but Jen, did you want to say something? Jen Derwington Peacock.
I
Okay.
have to reminded myself to unmute. Yeah, my story comes from my last episode of Z Nation, which is also an hour-long show with a lot of special effects that we shot in 5 days, with a budget of about $750,000 and all on location as well. My last episode, when I was assigned it by the showrunner, had a big Native American storyline, a storyline about a Native American group of zombie apocalypse survivors that had what I thought were some very culturally appropriative elements to it. And I was really resistant to even doing it at all. And I tried to push not to do it because I didn't think it was respectful. But the showrunner really wanted to do it. And so I kind of had to, what I figured out, what I tried to do was just hand the microphone to Native American filmmakers that I knew. And I met with two Native filmmakers I had worked with before, and they were like, okay, well, this is what, the whole episode ended with a big ceremony. And it's like, well, you never show Native ceremony on camera. And so I, worked the script and got it to a place that I liked, and then kind of made pretty strong with the casting director to please only cast actual Native Americans in the native roles. And we ended up with an incredible cast from all over the country. And I gave them the script and said, please, if there's anything off, please let me know. And we'll fix it. We'll make it right. We cast Michael Spears, amazing Native actor who's actually a Lakota medicine man. And he came up with a whole original song for that final ceremony. Our Native background cast came up with a whole dance for it. They sort of created this whole thing that would be authentic, but still not appropriative of actual ceremony. The day we shot it, we didn't have the budget for lights bright enough to shoot at night. We were running out of daylight. All we had was the fire, the special effects fire. And we had no daylight left. And I just asked the special effects guy to turn up the fire as high as it would go. And we ended up shooting that final ceremony by firelight. And it ended up being, kind of my favorite thing that I've shot, that I felt like really my main job was to get out of the way for.
Amazing. I wanted to just get to Gwen.
A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I was working with Marcel Ophuls, and I was filming him making his own movie to put in my documentary. And I also found him a crew so he could film his documentary, which is about Palestine, actually. And as people, I don't know if people don't know Marcel Ophuls, he did the 1968 documentary, The Sorrow and the Pity. Mm-hmm. And Marcel's about 93 or so, and he's considered one of the best documentarians. But he was basically probably the most difficult person I've ever worked with, and he was incredibly sexist. And I gave him a cinematographer that was a woman, young woman, Israeli Russian, and he just kept on calling her sweetie pie and asking her, to come to his room. I mean, terrible things. And I had to figure out how to turn it around. And so what I did was I filmed everything. So everybody knew that they were all on camera. So I filmed him saying everything. I filmed the argument between the Russian Jews and the Palestinians. I filmed everything. And it actually has made an amazing piece. It's going to be very controversial. Wow. Because it shows Marcel, he saw it, and he actually goes, "It's all true, Gwen. It's all true."
That's amazing.
Maria, did you want to jump in real quick?
I have seen the trailer for Gwen's piece, and it's really intriguing. I'm looking forward to seeing that full movie. It's definitely, I think you got some good stuff with that technique. I was going to talk about also during the pandemic, when things shut down, turning to go back to old footage that we had, and that my sisters and I edited it and put it out, and that became our series, our web series, Old Guy, that then was up for Emmy consideration, and we did that campaign, and it was such a gift to have the time to focus on it because we have always been so busy doing other things. Like right after we shot it, I actually was hired to do another feature, direct a feature, and that I've been doing all the television programs. And so for everything to stop, we were able to turn and put the energy into it. But I also wanted to say, since everyone's talking about the books that they're turning into things, we are now working on, I don't know if you see this on my screen, my mom's book, Searching for Tamsin Donner. We are working on turning into a limited series, which it's just we would not have found the time if it weren't for the pandemic. So it's exactly what you're talking about.
That's amazing. I'm going to quickly call on Jessica because she also sent me a slide. Jessica Lowry. Let me just share.
I love it.
This is looks like a COVID story.
This photo just makes me laugh. Basically, this is September in Atlanta, and I was doing there's a show for Stars called Heels about brothers who have a small town wrestling establishment. And the story is that I was in maybe day 5 of prep for episodes 3 and 4 of this new series. And 4 of the top 5 actors all got quarantined with COVID exposure.
Oh.
So I was on a director scout, and the producers looked at me and said, "What could you shoot in 2 days?" And I hadn't even done I wasn't even close to a full prep. And I was like, well, let's look at the scenes that only have a couple people that we've actually already checked the locations and don't have the 4 of the top 5 actors. And so this was my first day of shooting, and off screen there's a guy floating in a pond, and there's decks everywhere, and there's all this craziness. And it was one of the most emotional scenes of the whole episode. But it ended up turning out really great because it really forced me to kind of, boil it down. Like we all know, what is the story? What is the purpose of these scenes? And in the end, I think everyone was like, Jessica saved the day, even though I just did the job, but I just showed up and was like, okay, sure, let's shoot. But I look like a crazy person in that photo, but it makes me laugh thinking.
I love your photo.
I love that photo with you in the mask and the Mickey Mouse shirt and the guy with the beard.
Like that was the showrunner.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I had the same thing, Jessica. I was supposed to start prep November 10th, and they called me they called me October 26th and said, "Can you come in and shoot for 4 days with no prep?" And it's like, okay. Yeah, it's outrageous.
Okay, anybody else want to quickly share? I see Varda.
Well, I just wanted to carry on a little bit about the Janice Inn project because it's so fascinating how it happened real quick. There has been so much beautiful focus in our society about really, how do you identify and who do you identify as and what is your identity? And so during this time, I was, earlier on in the pandemic, I started thinking, well, who do I identify as? I never thought of that. And that's when I started to kind of understand, my Jewish roots and so forth. And then I was thinking, I do a project, about someone who I feel like reflects how I identify. That's how I came up with this idea for the Janice Ian project. And it's just fascinating how it happened because I found this record in a garage sale. And since then, I've had, numerous conversations with her, but also with Arlo Guthrie, learning so much about history and from this perspective. So it's just quite a wonderful time to kind of dig into who we are through our stories.
Yeah.
So true. Thank you, Varda. That's really cool. Okay, who else? Etta, did you want to jump in? Because I think we're going to wrap it up.
Sure. And then I think Tina has something too. And I think my kind of quick thing is I feel like I was living the banker's wife, actually. 2 years ago, I was literally listening to The Banker's Wife on Audible, and a friend of mine called me. And her grandfather was the head of OSS and CIA in Thailand.
Oh my God.
His second wife was the Cuban artist Nila Arias Mison. And basically their daughter had died. And all of her artwork and paintings were pretty much stripped from the walls. and none of their family documents could be found. And my friend said to me, we were able to locate 8 safety security boxes. There are 4 of them in California. Can you go find them and open them? Because we're hoping that the artwork or any family documents will be in there. So when we were, kind of going through this like whole thing, I said to her, I go, I'm reading this book called The Banker's Wife, and this story sounds so close to what I'm reading in The Banker's Wife, because the other part of it is my aunt was also CIA, who raised me. And I didn't know this because she has Alzheimer's, and I didn't know this until my friend told me that her grandfather knew my aunt. And so we put together this kind of pitch, and we wound up getting through a second round at the Sundance Episodic Lab. But I had never written before. And so the second round is, okay, can you send us a script, right?
Yeah.
So I had never written, and I was also on a show. I was EPing a show. So I was like, I don't have time to meet the deadline to write this. And the pandemic hits, and my show shuts down. And we wrote a script of it, and it made it to 2 more rounds. And yeah, and now, it's been rewritten 3 times, and now it's a final for the Stowe Fellowship. So
congratulations.
Yeah,
It's
that's
such an incredible story.
thank you.
That's so amazing. And Mary Lou, you've been shooting back to back, right?
I have. I've done 9 episodes, and I've got 4 more ahead of me.
You have done 9 since the pandemic?
Since the pandemic, since October. Now, 6 of them were half hours, but still.
How are you faring? I found it like wearing the mask exhausting.
Yes, you want to drive yourself so that you can just take it off in the car. But
yes,
it's just fine.
It's fine. Yeah,
it's great. We can do it, and I am so grateful that we as an industry have set an example of we can work, and we can work safely. And I sing, especially Stephen and Paris's leadership. And thank you for Leslie.
Well, they were amazing. I mean, Stephen was like really leading the charge, and then Paris, and unbelievable.
I'm so glad that we're on the other side of this now. Like, things are getting better, no doubt. And Leslie, you were saying you were going to watch the DGA Awards with your vaccinated family.
Yes,
person.
I'm gonna be with my director's team. I mean, because everyone's vaccinated, and we'll keep our distance, and we'll order sushi, and I get to be with my team, which is so amazing.
We're all going to be rooting for you.
Oh, well, we won't win, but it's still it's so lovely. I couldn't be more grateful. It is the last hurrah for sure, and we were, oh my God. And for my team to be recognized means everything to me. They are rock stars.
Did you find any challenges that turned into opportunity in post-production that you can speak of?
I have spent a lot of time doing remote editing because of being overseas. So I love being in the editing room. I love editing. So it did not feel that different to me because the only thing that felt better was that I was on the same time zone with the editor, because I've been 8 hours different than the editor. So that has been very hard because someone has a really bad time. Like someone is up at either 7 in the morning or starting at 8 at night or 9 at night. So it was better to be editing on the same time zone.
Interesting.
Has anyone had I don't know. I think we used Evercast actually on the morning show.
I know Mary Lou said she's used it a lot too. And I'm sure you've had
very effectively. Mary, has anyone had anything in post that happened that, I guess, I don't know if I've had anything in the pandemic. You've shot a lot more, Mary Lou, in the pandemic, and Rama probably has too.
Yeah, I've been shooting a lot. It hasn't stopped since the pandemic. In fact, what was strange is that it just got busier for me, and also for adolescent, content. The
yes,
Gen Z, global agency that I started that represents, creators all over the world. We've just been doing so much production because people have been able to just get up and do their own shooting. But I don't know if the question was about post or, you know
Yes.
what, I wanted to say something. I wanted to say that on my last job a week ago, when I was in California, I came to set on the 7th day, ready to do, 2 more days of work. And I found out my DP had tested positive. And I was like, oh no. But then, you go into solve mode and I'm like, well, I'm in the union. I'm a DP. Okay. Because the other DP is on the tech scout. So I'll DP. So I walked in, I was like, I'm going to DP. And I got the first, ACAM and I were like working out. And then someone's like, Rama, can you come over here? And Jason, my AD, can you come over? And they walked us off. And we'd been named as like close contact. And we were removed off of the Warner Brothers lot. And I was sent to my hotel where I directed virtually. And I mean, and honestly, the silver lining was I got to watch Mike Robbins, who, for any of you guys who've worked with him, he's such a, he's so great. Yeah, lovely, lovely human being. And he cares most of all about people.
Yeah.
So everything he does is about protecting people. And it was so fascinating to watch. You don't get to watch people. I got, obviously I've watched Lesli work. It's just like, so I was like, so I sent him all my plans, my blocking, my plans, and I watched him execute. And then he'd come over and be like, is it okay? And I'd say, Mike, I'm directing the, it was really funny.
Wow. Rama,
that's my COVID
an amazing story. That is an amazing story.
By the way, she did another test. She was negative, and we were negative, but Warner Brothers wouldn't let us back. That was it. It was done.
Amazing. Wow.
I love that you were going to pick up and be the DP as well.
Yeah. What do you?
Oh my God.
What do you do? Grab your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh my God.
Tina, I want to get to you.
Thank you. Out of the biz, raising funds for the John Wayne Cancer Institute, and there was no video to use, and it's so powerful. You pop in a video, and you can get $10,000 gifts online from a letter. So they asked me, because I kept pushing it. They asked me to come to a conference and work with their little video crew that was going to shoot the speeches and get what essentially was B-roll. And I said, that's really a waste of our time and money. Why don't we set up some pieces? So I worked with the communications director. We designed questions to interview, I believe it was 15 cancer researchers and some patients. And we just went like fire in 6 hours, brought it all home, and I was able to generate 20 video pieces that I could then use for fundraising and left them with enough material to do 20 more when I had moved on. So it was exciting to bring professional technique to people who have never done anything like that before. It's kind of fun, like getting people to find that in themselves, that they can be part of that.
It's really nice. I love that comment. Thank you for sharing that. Lesli, did you want to wrap up with anything else? Do you want to share?
I have to say, this has been so great. This has been so great to listen to everyone and know that we have this community of people, of amazing women who are out there like making it work. It inspires me. This couldn't have been a better kind of thing to do on a Monday, and seeing all these amazing women. I feel inspired, and that's what we need to do, is inspire each other and help each other when we're having a hard one, because they happen.
I just wanted to share this because I showed this to Lesli and she responded positively to it. And it's about looking for the beautiful. So that's just a crack in the wall, and someone created art out of it. And I thought that was really touching. Like, how can we find things that are really imperfect or really messed up and still think positively? And, also this Amanda Gorman quote, "For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it." And I think, Lesli, you've been very brave. You've been a wonderful role model for so many of us. And it's really inspiring to be able to be at the stage of life that I'm at, in the middle of my life, and still have so much left to go and so much to look forward to because of role models like you, that you have paved the way. And I just really appreciate that. And you're incredibly positive, and I love that.
Thank you. That means so much to me. I mean, it really does. This is where I get inspired by listening to all of you amazing women. And I know when I started mentoring, because I came out of being a modern dancer, everyone was female, and I was that back then when there were so few women, I was told, do not help other women because there's only room for one of us at the table. I was literally told that. And I was like, oh shit, I don't want to live in the world if that is true. I will not accept that. And I have to say, that has never proven to be true. Helping other people has never harmed my career. And I think, thank God, that attitude has changed. I feel like now there's such a strong community of women who support each other and support other women. I mean, Best Direct Her is a real example of that, of like seeing other women's work. It's so inspiring. And let's be sure that work is seen.
I just want to thank you, Lesli. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Jen was going to say just a few closing remarks, and Etta, and then I'm going to wrap it up.
Yeah, just make sure we have one more week on our campaign left. So make sure you follow us for this year and for the years to come at Best Director on all social media channels. We'll continue to share our posts. You can also sign up for our newsletter and on bestdirecther.org. I think that's me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And now it's Etta, and we're going to
thank you. Thank you, Evercast, and thank you, Lesli, and thank you, everyone, for being here. It was really a wonderful communal situation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.